Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Yashoda Nandana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava Priye Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Go Premanandi Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschachita Satarini. So, this morning, we're going to add a little information to yesterday's class. Ask if you have questions, and then we're going to, by request, take up another topic. So, I forgot something yesterday. This morning I was hearing a little clip by Prabhupada, and we were talking about how Srila Prabhupada's coming to the West seems ordained or within the prediction of his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, that it was meant to happen, it was going to happen. And the one story many of us know is when Prabhupada was a married man towards when he was getting a little older, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta came to him in a dream and he said, you have to take sannyas, you have to give up your family. And around this time, I'm not sure chronologically when it happened, but Prabhupada's business fell apart. And he took it as Krishna's, thank you, he took it as Krishna's arrangement. At least in retrospect, he took it as Krishna's arrangement, that he was meant to do this mission. And if that business had been successful, maybe he would have stayed in family life, but it was falling apart. His wife was not interested in helping him. And so Bhakti Siddhanta came and said, you should take sannyas, spread Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said that he was horrified. Those were his words. I was horrified. I wasn't prepared for it. And he had a second dream in the same thing. 2 dreams with the same instruction. And Prabhupada took that instruction seriously. So it's, I think it's worth saying that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was watching Prabhupada. He was aware and he was facilitating. As we said yesterday, it's not within 3 dimensions. And I had personal experience with Prabhupada. In one time, he came to a temple. It was like maybe this long, but maybe a third as wide, a third smaller. It's in San Francisco. Yeah, maybe not quite as long and not quite as wide. And there were like 80 devotees in there, you know. All in saffron, all with shaved heads and tilak. And you might say, well, 80 devotees, that's not a lot. There were probably 500 in the whole movement. So 80 brahmacharis, that was like, substantial part of the movement, almost 1/5. And it was, to my knowledge, it was the largest gathering of celibates, of monks. So we knew Prabhupada was coming. We all shaved our heads, got out the floor polish, polished our heads. We were shining. It looked like we had floor polish on our head. And we had synthetic cloth, so the synthetic cloth was very bright, shiny, and no wrinkles. And we all had tilak, so it was quite a sight for Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada was coming in the temple, it was a storefront, so he was coming off the street. And when he opened the door, he saw all of us. And he didn't come in, he just stood there. And later on he said that he was so impressed to see so many brahmacharis. It was like being in India, seeing all these brahmacharis, but they're all American. And he said, I called for my spiritual master to come and look. So, and then another time, Prabhupada said, when I was in New York, even though I was alone, I never felt alone. So there was this tangible experience, or this tangible connection with his guru, getting guidance from him and feeling his presence. And Prabhupada said that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was seeing whatever he was doing. When Prabhupada finished translating one book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said, this is a great cause of celebration because Srila Bhakti Siddhanta wanted this. And he said, but he's seeing, he knows what's going on. And sometimes I think, when I travel and I meet all of you, I think maybe Bhakti Siddhanta knew you would all be here today. He knew this retreat would happen and you'd be here. Because he predicted to Prabhupada that people would be very interested. So sometimes when I see people joining, I think, oh, Bhakti Siddhanta knew you'd come. It was ordained. Like there were so many people in the West ready for Krishna consciousness. And another thing Prabhupada said, which adds to the mystique of it, he said that his disciples were sent by his spiritual master to help him. I used to wonder about that, and I was like, really? Because as disciples, we wouldn't think we were sent to do anything other than to enjoy this world. But, so Prabhupada alluded to it, but in one lecture he said it definitely. He said, you were all devotees in your last life. You have taken birth to help me spread Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada would say This is all a divine arrangement. Thank you. There's a lecture. I believe it must have been either on the appearance day or disappearance day of his spiritual master. Because we also celebrate the disappearance, because when a guru leaves, you celebrate his glorious life. So it was one of those 2 days, and he said, and Prabhupada said, who knew that I would come to your country? Like, Prabhupada didn't know that growing up, that he's going to have to do this. Who knew you would come to me? This is all transcendental arrangement, ordained by Krishna. So Prabhupada was seeing like he was fulfilling a prophecy and just stepping into it, and it being ordained, and he's just executing it. And then in one class that I attended, he said that Krishna consciousness movement, this movement will spread everywhere. This is Lord Chaitanya's desire. If you stay, you can get credit for doing the work. But whether you stay or don't stay, it will go on with or without you. But if you'll be used as an instrument if you stay. And that's, I think, how Prabhupada felt about his own life. And there's a beautiful story. Before Prabhupada came to America, he went to Mayapur, and he was at the temple of where... What's the temple? I forget. My brain's going dead. Where Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda met. Nanda. It's right next to our temple. What's the name of it? Nanda Acharya's. Yeah, Nanda Acharya's house. And at least I believe it was there. And Prabhupada went there before he went to America. And he used to go there as a younger man, and now he came there as a sannyasi. And it was the same Pujari, and he kind of recognized him, but because he was in saffron, he didn't immediately recognize him. And Prabhupada was chanting japa, and he was crying, and the Pujari said, so many things, my old friend. And he said, but why are you crying? And he said, my guru has given me an impossible order, and I am unqualified to fulfill it, and I'm just praying. And so, if you see, often Prabhupada talked about empowerment and his own empowerment, the empowerment given by the predecessor acharyas, and how we would be empowered because that was his experience. He never felt qualified to do it. He always felt unqualified. But the success he experienced, he felt it was because of the mercy of his guru. He was behind him. And he always told us the same thing, that you can do amazing things if you put your hands up in the air and say, Krishna, help me. Srila Prabhupada, help me. And you become an instrument, and you watch things happen that you couldn't ordinarily do. So that was Prabhupada's experience, and he handed that experience to us. And we, as young devotees, did lots of amazing things that we weren't really qualified to do. It was an empowerment. And things fell into place, sometimes mystically. You want to hear one story? Just because it's interesting. This is I was in Vancouver. This must have been 1971. I know that's like a weird date for you because you were born after that. But anyway, the Hare Krishna movement was alive and well in 1971. Maybe you were part of it. Who knows? And there was a devotee from Montreal, and he showed up in Vancouver. It's like, okay, I want to, I'm here. I'm coming to the West Coast. It's too cold in Montreal. I want to be here. It's like, okay. Then about 3 months later, he says, I'm going to a place called Victoria. It's an island across from Vancouver. I said, why? He says, well, periodically I bloop. Bloop means I just leave Krishna consciousness. Take a vacation. I don't think he left it. Anyway. So, all right, whatever. He's going to visit his friends. I have friends, and they're interested in Krishna consciousness. And he goes to their house, and he calls us up like a week later, and he said, everyone in the house wants to be a devotee. There were like 8 people. It was a commune, like a hippie commune. There were like 8 people. It's like, okay. So we go over there, And we stay with them. We do Harinam in the city. It was the first time ever done in that city. It was such a phenomenon. Traffic stopped. Cars stopped on the street to watch us. And there were at least 300 people on the street, on the sidewalk, watching us. It was crazy. Anyway, the people there got very inspired. And so we went back to Vancouver. There were 6 or 7 of us. And like the next day or like a week or 2 later, they said, we all moved. They lived in the country, and we all moved in the city, and we got a house, and we have a temple. And we need a temple. We need someone to run it, because there were brand new devotees. So all of a sudden, there were like 8 people, just like. Now, what did I know? I wasn't anybody special. But those things would happen all the time, because we were willing to be instruments. So, yes. Just wanted to add that. Before we go on, does anyone have any questions about what we're discussing here or what we discussed yesterday in terms of what you may want to know about Prabhupada? That it doesn't even have to be in terms of what we discussed, but just in general. Yes.
I would like to know, or I would like you to explain a little bit about youth today compared to youth back then, and if we can understand how to inspire the youth today as much as you guys were back then.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know so much about the youth today. That's the problem. I mean, I could see from a distance. Of course, my daughter's a youth, but they're devotees. One of the beautiful things about the youth that were coming to Prabhupada is that they were very, very revolutionary. They really wanted to change the world, and I think that's true of most younger generations, because they kind of look at, our parents messed it up, we want to correct it. Of course, that's how we felt also. So, but young people wanted to change the world, that's for sure. And they were very much into alternative ways of thinking, very much into India. And if you listen to the music of that generation, there's a lot of the lyrics were thoughtful. It wasn't just about "baby, don't leave me." It was deeper. And one historian said that was the last generation of young people that produced, made a substantial literary contribution through their music. That was the last after our generation. It was "Baby, don't leave me," or "Baby, I have another baby. See you later." Yeah. So it was a thoughtful generation. But I think at least one thing that distinguishes that generation from this generation, and we talked about it yesterday. As I remember, and so many people became devotees once they were convinced that this is correct. And they say, okay. And they would drop everything and move into the ashram. And it was like, and it's almost, you could say that Krishna arranged that generation because Prabhupada needed people to do that. You imagine if Prabhupada came and it was just congregational members, who would do the work of spreading it? There has to be people who would give themselves to it. For any organization, a non-profit at least to start, there has to be early adopters who take to it fully. So all the original people that took, you can read the stories, all those original people, if they didn't come and take it up, how could the movement go anywhere? So they were taking it up, and that made a huge difference. Like when I joined, there were grihastas. There was a few, but they were all full-time devotees. And the bulk of devotees were not married. They were all young, so we weren't married. And revolutionary, detached. I mean, Tredas from Bologna. I think he was just he joined when I was there. Summer of 1970. I was in San Francisco. I was living in the temple. And as far as I remember, he was just a hippie, like, he's probably just sleeping in Golden Gate Park. Like, so, a lot of people just they travel, they camp out, and a lot of people would just sleep at someone's home for a night. So becoming a devotee was like, well, they already don't have anything. They're already sleeping in the park or sleeping on the floor in someone's house. So it was like very good arrangement for Prabhupada to attract people. And that generation was not so career oriented. Dropping out of university was not a big deal. If you found something to dedicate yourself to, you drop out. In my generation in California, we used to think the stupid people are the ones who are still at university. The smart ones all dropped out. That's how we thought. So if you found something to give your life to, you would drop out. And you would feel like, yeah, I'm the smart one. No one has figured out what their life's about. I did. I dropped out. But even you see like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they all dropped out. You get an idea. That was the generation. You get some idea, you run with it. It was kind of anti-establishment. So people weren't, even the career-oriented people were not so excited about going into a career. So that's a huge difference. It was like now it's you stay in your position and you adapt Krishna consciousness to your lifestyle. In those days, it was like you just give up everything. In the long run, you kind of end up in the same place because then you get married and you have to adapt. In a sense, it's better just to adapt in the beginning. But the experience of living in an ashram is very valuable. For a year or two, you learn so much, and you do austerity. And you get to serve 24/7. And I could say one of the exciting things that I did, and I would encourage anyone to do this, is do something that no one's ever done before. Like go somewhere where no one's ever gone, and you can be the first one there to chant Hare Krishna. That's exciting. It's like an historical event. So as young devotees, we were able to go to places where people never saw devotees. It was really exciting. The newspaper would come out, radio, television, it's like, we're like 20 years old, we're on TV. Yes, Krishna consciousness. The professors invite you to the colleges. I'm 19 years old, college dropout, and I'm giving lectures to college students at universities. It's like, that's exciting, I think. So, in a sense, youth are all similar, but the culture is different. You have more of an establishment culture. We had a more of an anti-establishment culture. I mean, you still have people like that. So it worked for Prabhupada. It was good. You have stories of, there's one devotee, he saw Prabhupada and he just started crying. And Prabhupada said something like it was love at first sight, and he just became a devotee. There were actually lots of stories where people would come to the temple. They didn't know about Krishna consciousness and they'd never leave. So in situations like that, it's like, yeah, these were devotees. These are people that Prabhupada were coming to serve Prabhupada. They walk in the temple, I dedicate my life, I don't want to leave. That's unusual. So you get that. You get that a little bit. That happened to you, right? Yeah. But that would be normal. In the 70s, that was normal. Riding your bike to India. I'm going to India. All right, come to our temple for a stay for a few days. India's come to you. And then they'd stay in the temple. So there are a lot of seekers going to India. And people ready to experiment. So you still have people like that, but maybe not to the same degree, right? We have festivals in America called rainbow festivals. Do you have those in Europe? Yeah. So, something like that. It's like a recreation of 1966 or something. A little bit. Isn't it? Something? Yeah. Except everyone drives in a new car and has a new cell phone. We didn't have those things. We used to drive old Volkswagens and old Volvos. That was and VW buses. Yeah. I don't know about you. Where were you in those days? Where were you living?
In Mexico, I joined.
Really? In the late 60s or when? Early 70s?
No, that was 70s.
Oh.
Mid-70s.
Ah. Was it like that down there?
I don't know, I was just driving around and I did what you just said. I went into the temple.
Never left?
I stayed.
Wow. Yeah, there we go. We have an example.
But I just want to, if I may,
Yes.
we have an example of what you're talking about right here. This temple, there's just like a few devotees. They're all in their 20s, more or less. And they've been, they're like they're completely committed, doing service of 2 people, 3 people. And it's just, it's like it used to be. I mean, that's how it was when we
Yes.
joined. So it's not that it's not happening. It's happening. It's happening right here around you. You may have noticed.
Haribol.
You may not have noticed, but it's happening right here.
Oh, I noticed, definitely, yeah. So beautiful. Do something. Do something no one's ever done. It doesn't have to be establishing a temple, but something. It's just exciting. And it's also exciting to try to do something not only that no one's ever done, but something that you don't think you can do. And you try it anyway. That's also fun. You jump off the cliff and Krishna will catch you. Yeah. It's exciting. When we were young devotees, because the movement was so small, we all had to do things we've never done before, because if we didn't, there was nobody else to do it. And we found that Krishna would help us. I mean, you have to be careful, if you're going to ruin another person's life by doing something you've never done before because you're not good at it, that's another thing. Okay, thank you for that question. What else? Any other questions about Srila Prabhupada that you're wondering? You have 2 Prabhupada disciples here. Now's your big chance. We won't live forever.
That story you told about Srila Prabhupada, wasn't that in Shantipur?
I heard someone say it was in Shantipur. I always thought it was at Nandanacharya's. Maybe I'm wrong. Is that because this is the place Prabhupada went every time he'd visit Mayapur? Did it? Yeah. It could have been Shantipur. I always thought it was Nandanacharya's. How do we find out for sure?
It says I'm pretty sure it says in the Lingamrita. I've read.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I always thought it was, yes. So, in Shantipur, yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes.
I know Srila Prabhupada gave his life for all of us.
Yes.
But I still have difficulty to connect with him. I don't know. I don't have the impression I know him, I want to know him.
Yeah, well, Prabhupada said, Prabhupada said, if you want to know me, read my books, because I am in my books. And so you understand Prabhupada's heart, you understand what he's giving, you understand what he wants from you. And the more you read and serve, the more you will feel his presence. It's just, you have to look for his presence in a way that you maybe have not looked for the presence of other people. But his presence is there, definitely, in his teachings. And it's there in his service. And as we said, Prabhupada said he never felt separated from his guru. So, Prabhupada would say, if you think of somebody, you're with them. So, when you think of Prabhupada, you're with him. When you take care of the cows, why do we even have cows? Who would be taking care of cows? Would you be taking care of cows if Prabhupada didn't come? So you have a connection with the cows, but it's through Prabhupada. Who protects cows now? Very few people. So everything you're doing, all the prasadam you're taking, all the kirtan, that's all a gift of Prabhupada. So you're connecting to him through those actions, through those activities. And anyway, you just, keep your heart open, let him guide you, and it'll become more evident as the days go by. But you're directly serving Prabhupada by doing your service here, because this is his temple. And the more you take responsibility in his mission, the more you feel his presence. Yeah, so, yes, the more you will bear a burden of responsibility, the more you'll feel, Prabhupada, I'm doing this for you. This is what you want. And you'll feel his presence. And you'll feel that he's happy. And if you tell someone about Krishna, you'll feel that Prabhupada's happy. You'll experience it. I'll tell you a story. When I lived in Los Angeles, Prabhupada would come there every year. And many, many devotees from America would come there. And the leaders would have the opportunity to be with Prabhupada. And you could kind of wiggle your way into maybe going on a morning walk with him, or if he was in his room or in his garden. In his room is more difficult, but he had a garden there. You could kind of get in because there's more room. And all the book distributors, they didn't do that. And they all said, I feel closer to Prabhupada when I'm out distributing books than when I'm sitting next to him. Like they all felt that way, because that was their relationship all year long. When Prabhupada was not there, their relationship was distributing books, so they felt his presence. And then when he came, they actually felt more distance being right next to him. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I think everyone who was a full-time book distributor felt like that. So I think that'll help you. Prabhupada used to say the mosquito is sitting on the lap of the guru, so he's right there, but he's simply biting. So proximity is not necessarily actual closeness. And then Prabhupada said, I only met my spiritual master 6 times. And my other godbrothers, some of them were with him all the time. But look what Prabhupada did, and look how close Prabhupada felt to his guru, even though he hardly saw him. Yeah. So it's not a physical thing. It's nice to be physically present, but as we said yesterday, many were physically present who are not here now in Bhakti. So physical presence is good, but Prabhupada said presence of the words is better, because you can always be present with the words, anywhere, anytime. Physical presence, you can only have it when you're there. And of course now we don't have the physical presence. Maybe you should do Guru Puja, do some service here, get the flowers, do Guru Puja. That can help you also connect. And Prabhupada will reciprocate, and he's seeing your activities, and he's smiling on you. It's just a question of feeling it, opening yourself to feel it. And you can't think of him like an ordinary person, because then you'll say, I feel distant. But look at all the things that Prabhupada has said to help you. You'll naturally feel a connection. He said this, it helped me. He said that, it opened my eyes. There's an indebtedness there. In our history, sometimes disciples have gurus that they're very close to, that they never met. They've only learned from their literature or learned from those who heard from them. And they develop this very special kind of camaraderie in a sense, an attraction for hearing from this particular guru. And they related so much that that became their main guru. Even though they may have had initiation from a guru present, but that guru became their main guru. They felt so close. Interesting, isn't it? Like this is the most important guru in my life, and I never even met him. That's the power of words and of following the instruction and the power of service. Yeah, it's beautiful. Otherwise, life's going to be difficult. Prabhupada goes, our guru goes, we're all feeling there's nobody here. So that there's a sense of separation. He's not here, obviously not physically, but he is here. It's just harder to access. When Prabhupada left, some devotees went to one of Prabhupada's God brothers to help. They wanted to understand how we will continue in his absence, because they had to do that when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left. So they had experience. They said, when your guru goes, it's going to take more effort to connect because he's not here. You'll have to, dig deeper into what his mission is, what he taught. And you're going to think you've understood what he taught, and when he's gone, you're going to realize there's much you didn't understand. So, penetrate, study, go deeper. You can watch the memories of Prabhupada. Those are beautiful. Those are so many stories you'll never read in a book. And you learn so much about Prabhupada, and the more you learn about him, the more you'll become attached to him, the more you want to be like him, and the more you want to serve him. And my experience is whenever I took more responsibility for serving Prabhupada, I always felt closer. Very close. So, he's there with you in the barn every day. Hare Krishna. Thank you. And he's with all of us, even outside the barn. I'll tell you a story, yeah. We went to this city called Edmonton, it's in Canada, and we were the first devotees there. So it was really exciting. We met a Hindu society, and they wanted us to do a program. And so, I don't know, there's hundreds of them came. I'm like 20 years old, and I'm all fired up, Ironed my dhoti like 14 times that day, and shaved my head at least 6 times. And just like put on tilak till it was perfect. I was really excited. And then I sat down to give a lecture, I just said something that Prabhupada would say to Indian audience. And I just felt like Prabhupada was sitting next to me. It was like, we're doing good, aren't we, Prabhupada? Yeah. No, I have a story. This is a good one. You're gonna like this story. And this story is instructive also. So I was asked to go to Vancouver, Canada. I was living in San Francisco, maybe 30 devotees, like 25 brahmacharis. It was very, very, one of the most, what we call fired up temples. San Francisco is a fired up city. So all these young men, and we were on fire, kirtans, amazing kirtans. 20 years old. Yeah, faster, faster, louder, louder. And then they sent me to Vancouver. There was 3 devotees there. And I'm from California. I never saw snow before, so the winter comes and it's snowing. I'm like, why are people living here? There's ice. And that was my first time. What's wrong with you? How come you're living in an icebox? You're living in a refrigerator. Like, what's wrong? Why don't you move? It was very awkward for me. And very, very difficult. And the devotees were not that cooperative, and they all had very heavy personalities. Yeah. You wouldn't want to meet them. You wouldn't want to get on their wrong side. It's just not good. And I was not a citizen of Canada. And if I were to stay, if I were to stay, I would have to get residence in Canada. But this is 1970, and all the young people, not all, but many young people from America were going to Canada because there was a draft for the Vietnam War. So they were leaving. If they went to Canada, if they could get residence in Canada, they couldn't be drafted. So I went to my lawyer. I said, am I going to get my residence? He said, no, everybody's coming, and your paperwork and all that doesn't look that good. And I was really happy because I wanted to leave. I really didn't like it there. It was really hard for me. But I didn't just want to leave because I wanted to do my duty. But I thought, if I can't get my green card, I can call up the San Francisco temple and say, you have to find somebody else because I have to leave. I can't stay here any longer. But anyway, to be dutiful, I went, did all the paperwork, everything. And then I went out of Canada into America and then turned around and went through the border and gave them all the paperwork. And he looked at the paperwork, and it seemed to me like 3 minutes he came out. And I thought, he looked at his paperwork and he was probably laughing. Who's this joker that he thinks he's going to get residence in Canada? He's got like no money, dropped out of university. It's like, we don't want him in our country. He's just a parasite. He comes back 3 minutes later, stamps it, he goes, welcome to Canada. Gives me the card. I'm like, damn. And I felt like Krishna and Prabhupada were sitting in the car in the front seat, just looking at me going, yeah, you're going to stay here. It was mystical like that. So you could, so is it, and I have another one. This is my story. I was young, and I really don't like to manage that much. And so it was hard for me. And at one point, it was so hard, I was in total anxiety. And then I had a dream that night, and Prabhupada came in the dream, and he took my hands, and he was massaging it, like I could feel it. And I remember this dream. He was like, it's okay, don't worry. Like relaxing me. Yeah, in the dream. Yeah, it's like, he doesn't know. Well, he knows. Whether he was alive at that time is not the issue. He's transcendental. So you can have those experiences also. Is that okay? Yeah. Hare Krishna. I hope you have a dream tonight of Prabhupada. But when you read his books, know that you're with him. Another thing is like, if you hear the memories videos, devotees would say like, I was listening to lectures of Prabhupada, on the recordings, and then I finally get to see him. And they're expecting like fireworks and, they said it's the same thing. I was hearing the same thing I heard on a lecture. It's not different. It's the transcendental sound of his instruction. It's the same. I mean, it's nice to be in front of him. It's like, he says it, it's like, you feel it more, but at the same time, there's the same voice. It's the same instruction. So that's there. Good. What else? You can ask Nourish or Prabhu a question. You could say whatever you like.
Yeah. I was just thinking, how do you remember all this stuff? I can't remember it.
Well, one of the ways I remembered is that I made my Prabhupada memories in 1992, and I have to go back and listen to it. I was listening to it once, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot that. And worse, I called Siddhanta. I said, do you have the original? Because he doesn't put everything in. He goes, no, I didn't keep them because it wasn't the days of digital. So it's just, so I don't know. If it has high emotional content, we generally remember those things. I don't know. I'm so fascinated with Prabhupada. I just I could listen to those memories, like each one I could listen to at least. I probably listened 4 times to every one. I just find it fascinating because there's nobody like that. We never met anybody like that, and we never had or will. And so I think that's why I remember. It's so interesting. Yes?
I have a question. Prabhupada created this movement and did so much for this movement with his lifetime and with his first devotees. And sometimes as the next generation, it's really hard to imagine ourselves doing anything more or less. And sometimes I'm going to say I put pressure on myself because at the same point I want to honor all of this movement, all of this legacy. And at the same time, I have this feeling of something new has to be done also.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we balance this idea of like modernity and also like the legacy that has to stay fresh?
I think Prabhupada demonstrated how to do that. Because when Prabhupada, was analyzing America, he saw this is much different than India. So it's not going to work exactly the same way. But there were foundational principles that are transcendental, that will always be there. It doesn't matter when. Year-rounds, Mangalarti, this whole morning program is not going to change. Or it might change slightly, but not much. But the things he had to adapt to were cultural, the outreach. And I think we can be certain that he would have kept adapting, because that's what he did all along. And a lot of times, he would try something and then he would see it didn't work. Or he would say, this is an experiment, I don't know. It works in India, I don't know how it'll work here, so he'd try it. And he was not attached because it was his idea. If it didn't work, if it didn't help people. And he was very compassionate, and his compassion was overriding rules and regulations that could get in the way of a person's progress. So if you keep those two things in mind, we want to be adaptable. At the same time, if you water things down, then there's no value. You put enough water in the milk, then there's little or no value. So you don't want to do that. It's more like being able to give people what they can digest according to where they're at. And I think that's extremely important because you can be adaptable to different audiences. You're not, some people are more serious than others. You'll talk to them about sadhana, about finding a guru, taking initiation. Other people, it's more kirtan, maybe some general philosophy. Take them to Vrindavan, let them experience firsthand. So, Prabhupada, he had his eye on the academic world, the scientific world, varnashram, farming, restaurants, school. It was like everywhere. And he would often write devotees and say, your service is the most important. And every devotee had a different service. So he wanted everyone to feel important, that they had value in Krishna's service. And it wasn't a question of how Krishna conscious they were. It was a question that they're willing to do service. He would fan that spark. What I have always felt is that the temple is the place where standards are set. So it doesn't mean you have to follow those standards, but those are the standards Prabhupada set for the full-time devotees. So when you come to the temple, you see those standards. And you see perhaps this is where I want to come to someday. If that gets watered down, then everything is ruined. There's got to be a place where you can see this is what he wanted. You might say, oh, Mahatma, you're a fanatic, you've been doing this all your life, or whatever. But it's not that I'm telling people you have to do what I do. But at least if you want to do anything that I do, at least I do it every day. I'll be here tomorrow doing it and the next day. So you can come to the temple, the same devotees will be here doing the same thing every day. You need inspiration, you can come there. And you take that inspiration and you apply it according to your level. So if we teach like that, I think we're okay. Because there's a place for adaptability and there's definitely a place for standards. And if you water down the standards, then nobody knows what the standard is. That's a problem. So we have Brahmins When Prabhupada made Brahmins, he's like, you have to be in Sattva Gun. You have to follow strictly. That's what it means to be a Brahmin. So we have devotees who follow strictly. They're great inspirations for everybody. And when the congregation comes here, they get inspired by those devotees who are strict, even though they feel like, well, I can't live that way, at least not now. But they get inspiration from the people who are living that way, because that's the standard, right? And just having the ability to engage somebody and pull someone along to the next level, that's our service, and that's what Prabhupada did. If you look at the beginning, people didn't know anything, and he was giving the philosophy, but practically he was, they were moving slow. Do you know, after the first initiation, when we take initiation, we vow to follow principles. Prabhupada did not make them vow to follow anything. After the initiation, he told them what the principles were. Did you know that? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Just take it. Let's get going, Let's move along a bit. Not that he continued to do that, but he sometimes said, we will initiate you. If you believe in Krishna, and you know that you're a servant of Krishna, we will initiate you if you're willing to chant 16 rounds and follow 4 principles. We'll give you a chance. Maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. We'll give you a chance. So Prabhupada was very liberal in that. Okay, take initiation, here's a chance. So we're giving people chances. You give them service. I have a nice story. You'll like this story. So I have a godbrother, his name is Gunagraya Maharaj. He was very innovative. And he made lots of devotees. And I worked with him for many years. And there was a boy who was a painter. And so Maharaj said, can you paint our prasadam room? And he said, okay. Prasadam room did not need painting. But Maharaj thought, this is an opportunity for him to do service. So he painted all day, and then night would come, and he would say, why don't you just stay in the temple instead of going home, because you're going to come back here tomorrow? And he would say, okay. And it took him 5 days to paint, and he never left the temple. And Maharaj knew that if he would stay with the devotees for a few days, he would become a devotee. But that's how he so-called pushed him. He pushed him without pushing him. Another thing that Maharaj used to do, which is really interesting, and just so you understand how he was sensitive to helping people. We need association. That's so important. If you want to progress spiritually, you have to be with spiritually minded people. And especially nowadays, the society is so materialistic. It's really, if you don't have good association, it just can make it impossible. So Gunagraya Maharaj used to organize programs in people's homes. Only because he was cultivating people and he wanted them to come to programs. So he needed a program to have so he can invite them to something. So he would create those programs. He'd invite all the devotees, but they were specifically for these people. These people didn't know that, but they were specifically to give them association because they needed that. And that not necessarily those people were going to become members of our movement or full-time devotees or anything, but giving them nice association to help them. And we're all progressing, You don't know where anyone's going to go. We're progressing. So if you want to bring people to Krishna and you're a teacher, you have a standard, some standard you have. And your dedication gives people faith that I can do it also. Right? I'm a conditioned soul, you're a conditioned soul, we're all struggling. But when I see that you're not giving in to temptation, where you have a great degree of tolerance, you're very determined, you're working in the world, but still you're doing your bhakti and doing service, that's huge inspiration. And then it tells people that it's possible for me to do that also. And you're working in the world that tells people I can do that also, and you show them how to do it. That's beautiful, because most people are coming now and are not moving into temples. So we need examples of people who can live in the world and master the process. Did I answer your question, or you're more confused than? Yeah, it's not black and white, but Prabhupada said purity is the force. Well, actually, that's a saying, and he quoted that. And I think that's. Oh, you know what Prabhupada said? He said, there's a beautiful letter. He said to help answer this question. He said, if you look at other organizations, they have better managers, they have better speakers, they have better organizers. He said, but our commodity, our product, our most valuable product is our purity. So, we may not establish temples like Swami Narayan. They have so much money and they're establishing beautiful temples everywhere. But our greatest, that's the word I was looking for, our greatest asset is our purity. So we don't want to compromise that. And we don't want to force people to come to our standard of purity if they don't want to. But at least if it's there, it's an inspiration for wherever they are at. That's the point. Yes. Somebody? Yes.
Thank you very much for the class. I was following on Facebook.
Oh.
You were talking about feeling the presence of Srila Prabhupada. And what's the difference? Because generation will go on.
Yeah.
What's the difference between this inspiration and the vision that the so-called rhythmic principles or vision
Oh,
we have?
the difference.
Can you make clear this point, because it looks very subtle.
Yeah, it's very similar. What he's saying is there's a group of followers of Prabhupada who felt that after Prabhupada leaves, he should remain the guru, and people will take initiation from him through a priest who will initiate on his behalf. And that's not explained anywhere in our books, and it's never been done before. So it's created a bit of a controversy. And you're asking, what is the difference in potency of Prabhupada in that movement and in our movement? I don't think... I mean, in terms of their inspiration to serve Prabhupada, it's very strong. In terms of philosophy, there's a difference. That's the problem. But in so many other ways, ISKCON is similar. We want Prabhupada in the center. We want to take our inspiration. We want gurus to bring people to Prabhupada closer. We are representatives of Prabhupada. And we say so many things they say, maybe almost everything, except they say no initiation and we say initiation. And it's interesting because it's so close in so many ways. What do you say, Nareshwar? Have you thought about this a lot?
I think what you said is completely right, because that little thing that they say, well, you can take initiation directly from Prabhupada, and there's just a priest who's going to connect you. As you mentioned, it's nowhere in the scriptures.
Yeah.
You have to have a guru, but you can have many Siksha gurus, and the most important Siksha guru for us is Srila Prabhupada. So
Yes.
that's the difference.
Yeah, so he's the most important for them. He's the most important for us. They're very inspired, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
It's, yeah.
That little thing is problematic.
Yeah.
Just because it's not Guru Sadhu Shastra.
Yeah.
What
so many offenses.
Oh yeah, they make
And
offenses.
why they keeping inspired?
What a question. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Well, Hare Krishna. I don't know them well enough, but from what I see on the internet, they're very inspired. I think they're inspired to show that they're right and we're not right. Because that can be that can be inspiring, like competition. We're going to show you this is the right way. I mean, one of the worst things anyone can do in spiritual life is to do things which cause pain and harm to another devotee. And the higher that devotee is, the more adverse the reaction will be if you do that. And many of them do that, which is, I think, one of the most sore points for Prabhupada disciples, because a lot of Prabhupada disciples might say, well, just let them do that, Prabhupada's there. But if they're criticizing, that's, you have a philosophy that nourishes criticism. That's a strange philosophy. It's like the soil, the soil of your philosophy is producing weeds of criticism. And I never understood why common people didn't understand that. But I'm assuming many of those people are critical themselves, so they align with that way of thinking. But to people who aren't critical, it seems quite obvious. This is a very interesting philosophy. It causes people to offend the devotees that gave their lives to Prabhupada and the most advanced devotees in our movement. I mean, what can we say? It's just the nature of life. And many people think that because you need connection with a person to nourish your life, they think that philosophy it can't go on perpetually, because you need people in your life. And if you're going to have people in your life and guide them, those people want you to be their guru. They don't want, 20 generations later, Prabhupada, it's not, they're not going to want that. So maybe it'll have a shelf life of its own, and maybe ISKCON will inherit everything that they've done. Sometimes I look at what they're doing and we think, why is Krishna letting them do that? And I think, because they're going to give all their properties back at some point. They're going to create, because that happened in New York, with another devotee. He created a project and it was ultimately given to ISKCON, given to us. So anyway, these things are going on. But I can say, from the perspective of being a disciple and the perspective of having disciples, the guru, to not have a guru-disciple relationship, it's kind of like somebody just killed your father. It's like, this is love, this is affection, this is service. To take that away and just have Prabhupada, to me, that's like violence. It's like pulling your father out of the house. He's not your father. What do you mean he's not my father? No, your grandfather's your father. Anyway. Hare Krishna. Yes, Varshandarani.
Prabhupada said that 15% of my work is done. So could you please share some practical tips how to implement Varnashrama?
I have a god brother. I'll tell you what he said. He said, if you want to establish Varnashram, you have to train Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas will then establish Varnashram. Because that's their job. I say, how will they do it? He said, you don't have to worry, because they're Kshatriyas. They will figure it out. I said, well, how will you do it? They need to get some land, and they'll rule that land. They'll create a community. They'll create a city. That was his idea. What do you think, Nireshwar?
I'm not an expert on varnashrams. Yeah.
I'm also not an expert in Varnashram, but my understanding is that Srila Prabhupada wanted to create brahmanas who would then oversee, the creation of such, such
Yeah.
institutions.
Yeah.
They're already there. I mean, Varnashram, the categories are there, even out there in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But, they have to be dovetailed. There have to be some kind of guidance. And that comes from the Brahmins. So that's my understanding
Yeah.
of what Prabhupada did.
Yeah, I think this devotee's point was that for it to happen practically, you'll need kshatriyas, and then they'll facilitate the Brahmins. They'll facilitate everything. That was his idea. Anyway, it's a difficult subject, and I think Varshanarani, if you talk to different people, they'll have different slants on it, and it also is interesting because Varnashram is mixed up perhaps with Indian culture, so people who are into Varnashram like the Manu Samhita and literatures which are very conservative and may not be applicable. So the idea of Varnashram, for those of you who don't know, it's a way that would spiritualize society, and our spiritual master Prabhupada wanted to spiritualize society, bring everyone closer to God. And inadvertently, if those who want to establish this social structure become too conservative, it'll have the opposite effect. It won't include everyone. It'll only include ultra-conservative people. That's my fear, And, but, some people say the way the world's going, it's bound at some point to crash, the economy or World War III or both. And then everyone's going to want to be forced. They don't want to. They'll be forced to change their lifestyle and, be self-sufficient and so forth. The whole village will come here because you'll be the only one with food. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He said they will come to our farms. But I was also mentioning yesterday, and I got sidetracked, that there are many times devotees would ask questions to Prabhupada. Like, Srila Prabhupada, you predicted in 1975 there would be World War III, but it never happened. Is it because of the influence of chanting, the influence of distributing Vedic literature? And Prabhupada said yes. Why? Srila Prabhupada, there's so much more interest in vegetarianism and reincarnation and these topics. Is that because of the influence of chanting, the distribution of literature? He said yes. So I don't know all the questions, but when he was asked about shift in society, he said, yeah, we're contributing to that shift. That's pretty powerful. I mean, if you take it at face value, Prabhupada said, what he said is, Prabhupada, why wasn't there World War III? He said, Krishna changed his mind because of your spreading of Krishna consciousness. If you take that verbatim, that means we have more political power than anybody. The chanting of the holy name can change the world. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? So, you're part of something that's quite great, although it seems like we're not that significant. But you're all chanting, and that's purifying. That's purifying. You imagine you had this village. Every home there was kirtan. This village would be uniquely different from any village outside of Vrindavan. So there would be changes, There'd be a drought and only here would be rain. Things like that would happen. And things like that have happened. Yeah. Yes.
On the same topic. On the same topic, there's maybe too much caring about this varnashram and like Vedic society and everything. And to be honest, I believe it's kind of not possible, at least in the West. And also there's this whole idea of Kali Yuga that it's going to go down at some point. So sometimes you think about like, what's the point? We should maybe just focus on doing our best, being good devotees, and maybe not try to too much put efforts on this. Maybe, I don't know if they're externals, but for me, they look quite external subjects.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they're going to help make more devotees. Maybe make the devotees feel better, because varnashram is a system that like can make us maybe.
Well, you know, there's also, I mean, I think maybe we could look at it a different way. Not look at it at the way it seems some people want to take it, but just look at it the way in terms of engaging devotees, like understanding their nature and what would inspire them. And, you know, your ashram, what's the best ashram for you? Maybe for him, he should be a brahmachari his whole life. Maybe that's the best thing. That's part of our ashram. Or he should be a brahmachari for 5 years. And then we look at him and we say, no, I don't think more than, when you're 23, you should get married. So that's part of our ashram, which is, otherwise it's like everybody stay brahmachari forever until you can't breathe anymore, and then talk about the next ashram. So I think that's also, we could see that's also part of it. How to more intelligently engage people according to their varna and ashram. Because we mentioned this yesterday or the day before. When you have a talent and you don't use it for Krishna, it can have a very bad effect on you. Not just spiritually, but psychologically and emotionally. And if you have a talent and you can use it and that service inspires you, that can dramatically have a positive effect on all those factors. Plus, your sadhana becomes more enlivened and inspired. So for me, when I look at varnashram, those are the first things I look at. Another thing I look at is the idea of putting pressure on people to advance beyond where they can advance. No, Prabhu, you should be up here, Do you have a guru? When you're getting initiated, there's pressure. I'm fine over here, So that would also be part of, no, you should be a Brahmin, This movement's for Brahmins, push. So I think that's, when people talk about varnashram, that's I can understand that, because I see that doesn't happen enough in our movement. And I think, so we look at it like that, that's pretty healthy, right? And as far as the other things that seem very traditional or Indian, we need someone to show us what varnashram looks like in a working way that's practical in 2025. Then we can say, okay, that's good, that works. But if we don't see it, people just talk like all kinds of ideas, what it might mean. And I'm not that smart to understand, but at least I understood what I just said. I think that's important. And I don't like to see people pressured to advance beyond their capabilities. It's very unhealthy. And you need to find your place. And that's varnashram, right? Find your place. Be encouraged. Yeah. I mean, maybe in varnashram, they would have a house, but it's not for like full-time devotees. It's like, well, you can stay in this house. You can, just come at 7:30, come to class, do some service, something like that. You're not brahmachari material. That's okay, but you can still be in our community, or like that, something like that.
Because I feel the varnashram in Shastras is more like global, like all society has to be like this for it to work.
Yeah. Well, it did work that way at one point.
Yeah. But to hope that it's going to work like this.
Yeah, I mean, what's the goal of varnashram? It's to bring people to Krishna. So, if you get, it's a challenge when you're dealing with a culture that's so ancient, and you're applying it in a world that's ever changing. It requires a lot of intelligence. how to make it work. And we saw with Prabhupada, he was more attached to making it work than sticking to a principle that's antiquated and it doesn't help. So that's kind of like the paradigm. And wherever that takes us, it's going to take us. And who's ever successful, people will look at and say, oh, you did this, this works, this is good, I like this. And that's how our movement, that's how everything goes. Whoever is successful, people will copy. I don't like it when people talk theoretically. It drives me crazy. I say, just show me, it should be like this and that. I'm like, I don't understand how it could be like that. But if you show me, then I can say, yeah, I'm dumb. I didn't understand. I needed to see it. But I think a lot of times people think they can show it more easily than they can. Yes, who has the mic? Yes.
If I may share something.
Yes.
So if you're interested on this topic, I should really encourage you to look at Urmila Mataji's work. She talks a lot about Varnashram. And I live in Radhadesh, and we're right now trying to establish that. It's practically very difficult, but the idea is not to create a perfect world. Right now, the idea is just to see what people's nature is so that they don't get burnt out. Because we have a lot of people in the community that do the wrong work, and so they get burnt out, and they think we have this culture now in our society that the harder you work, the better your work is. But it's not true. You're supposed to do work that actually fulfills you, and that's the best. And in Shastra, it's also said, don't do someone else's work. And that's the whole problem right now we have in Radhadesh. And so the first idea right now is just figuring out who is good at what, and to kind of rebalance all of that. And of course it's difficult because people are attached to some service they have been doing since 20 plus years, but it's actually maybe not what they're best at. And so yeah, it's difficult, but we're trying it, and especially with the younger generation, to already immediately kind of find out what the best would be, and then learn that as well, and get the skills, and try out different things to see what fits best. And yeah, so trying it.
The hard part is once you do that, having the engagement for them where they can earn a livelihood, right? Because you think, well, I like to do this, but how will I pay my bills? I have to go learn to write code and get a job at Microsoft. So that's the harder part. I think it's easier to figure out what is someone's nature, but engaging them in a way that they can live, that's a challenge. Yes, sir.
Very, very short comment. I was also a young boy in ISKCON London, and I was serving as a brahmachari, and the main culture was work, do the needful until you burn out. That was the history of the culture. And then I watched Mahatma Prabhu's video because someone suggested me, someone from Australia, find your Dharma. And Mahatma Prabhu is in Vrindavan. I watched it 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It was very, very helpful, revolutionary. It really helped me a lot. Varnashram is find your place. First of all, it's find your place. Find who you are. Try to understand where you go, how you can serve, sustain it.
Yeah. Well, you know how, maybe some of you know this, but like, there's a funny story. Like, a man goes to India, and he goes to a shop, and there's the grandson, there's the father in the shop, and the grandfather. And he comes back 25 years later, and there's the same grandson, same father. They all just moved up. That's village life. Everybody just does it, and I mean, it's changed now, but traditionally, your father's a potter, you're a potter. It's not a problem. This is how we earn a living. But now it's a problem because, there's not money in it, and that's what's messing everything up. I asked Indian boys who are IT students, and I said, if your parents felt you could make more money growing organic produce and selling it, would they have told you to study agriculture? And they all said yes. So there's no question of their nature. It was just what makes the most money. That's what we're dealing with. And the irony is that's stronger in India than in other parts of the world, where it's supposed to be. It's so flipped on its, it's flipped itself. We have some Indians here, right? Right? It's the culture of India now because of economics. And these girls can go to school in the West and get really good jobs and be financially secure in ways their parents couldn't. So it's hard to just say, well, maybe you want to become a photographer. Maybe you want to just be a dancer. There's a movie about that called The Three Idiots. Yeah. Hare Krishna. I guess we should stop. So last night at 11:30, my wife got to the airport. Many hours, like 4 hours, 5 hours later than she should have. And I asked her if she could facilitate at 11 o'clock. And Julian was saying, it would be nice to talk about relationships. And so she's an expert at that, and I can help her. I have a meeting at 12, so if she comes, then I can go to that meeting. If not, anyway, that was the plan last night, when I was communicating with her. We'll see, because who knows when she went to sleep and when she's getting up and how she feels. And her luggage didn't come, so we've got to figure that all out. Whose clothes is she going to wear, and whose toothbrush is she going to use, and all that. So hopefully she can make it, at least, if not for all of it, for part of it. And you can look forward to that. She's really good, really smart, and very practical. Hare Krishna. And I would say all the principles that she would teach about relationships are applicable to any relationship, not just couples. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
His Grace Mahatma Prabhu ki jai. Loka Eco Farm ki jai. So daily seva groups today. Group 1 is doing decorations. The reference devotees Rajarenu. Kitchen is group number 2. Cleaning group number 4. Govinda Restaurant Seva group number 5. And mind the fact that you're leaving at 9:40. Very soon. Group number 5. You're leaving at 9:40. The reference devotees Achintya was going to take you to Govinda Restaurant. And Prashada Seva now. Prashada Seva by group number 3, which is very good.